Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri Ravanis, and Lauren, there are a lot of things killing me this week.
Sure.
Like both literally and physically.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things killing me this week, but this is a football show, so let's stick to sports, as the kids say. What is killing me this week, Lauren, is how on earth has Jerry Jones not been physically barred from entering the Cowboys facility?
Well, I mean, I could think of one reason.
Sure.
He owns it.
Right. At some point, if his son is serious about doing things his father could not, doesn't he have to stage some sort of coup? Boy, what a choice of words right there.
I mean, listen, I don't know, but I would love that it's like this.
Yeah.
Because when I got the news of what they got, I saw a trade and I'm like, oh God, Panthers trade with the Cowboys. And I'm like, interesting. Okay, let's just see where this goes. Because you never know with Jerry.
Yeah, of course.
And then I see that they trade JonathanMingo for a fourth. I'm like, oh my God, John, are we sure it's the right one?
Yeah, there is so much about this.
Maybe they got mixed up.
They had to have, right? Like,
there's no way they watched tape and did that.
When you texted me on Tuesday, I think I was on a bike ride. So your text was the first I had heard about it.
I was filled with joy
that this had happened. And the fact that they got a fourth for Mingo. Now, look, I hate that you have to pick swap, right? Like, I wish that they were just able to get a fourth. But to find out that it is a 7th round pick.
And it's the one they got from Kansas City, which means it'll probably be like a last.
So it's not because of the
and they have another 7th.
Yeah, because of the supplemental picks, it's probably not going to be Mr. Irrelevant, but it's probably only going to be like 4 or 5 picks ahead of that. Like, holy shit. And the thing that I keep coming back to,
I would have wanted cash if I'm Dallas instead of just give me some money. Like,
and this is the thing. Like, I keep coming back to looking at this from the Dallas side. And that is, it has nothing to do with Mingo individually, although, like, I think we all agree, we are like all the way out on JonathanMingo as a Panther. But to me, it's more like, you're 3-5. Why are you adding at all?
I mean, are we sure there's no one else they'd be interested in?
Right.
Did DanMorgan also tell them about an Ian Thomas? Perhaps they'd like to take a good, not a good look at.
Could we convince you to pick up the contract of Frank Reich? Who knows? He could be useful down the line.
I mean, is there a Miles Sanders, perhaps?
It is.
While you're shopping here,
this is the definition of like all upside, right? Because it is not just what Mingo has failed to turn into since the Panthers used a 2nd round pick on him in the 2023 draft. It is also the fact that, like, even though nobody within the Panthers will say it, like, it's very clear DaveCanales is just all the way out on JonathanMingo.
Well,
at this point.
Frankly, that relieves me because, and no offense to him as a person, I'm sure he's trying his best. I'm sure he's lovely.
Are we talking about Canales or Mingo?
Mingo.
Oh, okay.
Mingo, to be clear. I got thoughts for Dave later. But he has not been remotely reliable.
Yeah.
He has not had good hands at all. Kind of a prerequisite for the position.
Right.
In my opinion, just saying. And so, like, for me, I've been done, like I've kind of been out, and I've been frustrated when I've seen him in the game, even because I'm like, why? Like, I don't throw to him, please.
The very first game of the season against the Saints, the first regular season game, they ran a reverse with him, and my heart stopped. Now, granted, it ended up not counting because of a flag, but
that's
even
the
still,
best to me. That's the best thing he's done this
Agreed.
year. Actually, is and that's because you don't have to worry about him catching a football thrown to him.
But
it's
like,
put directly in his hands.
It's telling, right, that they didn't run that again. Like, we maybe saw that play one other time.
A couple more times, but like not much.
What we are losing in terms of production in 2024, Mingo has 12 catches this year for 121 yards.
I'm surprised it's that many.
Yeah, that's catches. That's not targets. And the reception, whatever it is you want to call it, reception percentage is actually much higher than last year, but that's because they're barely throwing to it.
Right. And also last year he dropped like almost everything.
And look, this is where I kind of have to own my optimism at the beginning of all of this. Like, maybe you remember this, maybe you don't.
I do.
I looked at Mingo and Bryce as like that could develop into like that's the Harrison Manning possibility for this team. And it was all built off. Gosh, it really looked like, especially because Thielen didn't play much in the 23 preseason.
Yeah.
It really did look like they were going out of their way. Frank Reich was going out of his way to make Mingo Bryce's guy. And he wasn't Bryce's guy. He wasn't Dalton's guy. He wasn't Reich's guy. He wasn't Canales' guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, it was time. And I think that's great that DanMorgan was able to say, you know, put ego aside. And great, and he wasn't the one that made this draft pick, but he was able to put the ego aside and say, you know, we don't have to keep trying for the sake of admitting or not admitting that we made a mistake. Well, we made a mistake. Let's move on.
I think a big reason for that, though, is because of the draft picks he did make, which are Xavier Legette. And Coker's not a draft pick, but
Jatavian Sanders is.
Right. Jatavian Sanders. Hi. Welcome.
Yeah.
Yay. Also, but Coker is still a signee by him. Like Jalen Coker is a guy he found and signed. And I mean, those three guys emerging, and, you know, Coker's kind of been there all year. Xavier as well, a little up and down at times, but like mostly promise from Xavier. And then with Jatavian Sanders coming out and playing the way he has, it's like, you no longer need to worry about whether or not Mingo is going to emerge at this point.
And you know what? I would tell you, based on what we have seen the last 2 weeks out of Chuba, I think it's very likely that whenever Brooks makes his debut, like, he very much is the spell guy at this point, right? Like, they are treating Chuba very much like, we are going to run you until your legs fall off. And if
not the legs fall off part, but I'm happy about the rest.
Sure. And so that tells me, like, Brooks must be making enough progress that he and Sanders are enough of a, whatever you want to call it, screen, check down, whatever threat, that there is no justifying keeping Mingo. Like, there's no reason to even think about, you got to keep Mingo on the roster.
Mean, Thielen's coming back soon as well. So, like, add that to the mix, and it's like, oh, a guy who can catch.
By all accounts, Thielen is supposed to be back this week. And like, did you see how close apparently we came to that not being the case?
Oh, I didn't actually. I was too busy dancing on Jerry Jones's.
So the report was that AdamTheilen asked for a trade. He told the media that he does love his teammates. He has loved working.
Oh, he's been great
with these quarterbacks. Sure. But he made note, I don't have a no trade clause. The report, according to, I believe this was first Schefter that reported that Thielen asked for a trade and specifically said, I would like to be in Pittsburgh if possible.
Not unlike a lot of North Carolina. Well, actually, they move here.
Right.
It's the reverse. I guess.
Very true. But Schefter was on with Pat McAfee, yesterday, I guess, and said by the time the trade deadline was nearing, those two teams weren't even close to a deal.
Well, respect then to DanMorgan for, I guess, like, standing firm and probably saying, like, you got to give us what he's worth or we're not going to do it, because, like, there's still something positive to be gained. And they know Adam is the kind of guy who's like a professional and is going to come to work, and he's not going to give anything less than his best. At least I believe that.
I agree with you. I mean, he's in a contract year too, right? Like that has to matter to a certain degree to a guy.
I know the narrative with Deontay Johnson was locker room stuff, and I'm reluctant to speak on that a lot of times, partly because I thought Deontay played really well when he was here. I have no complaints with the way he played when he was here at all. And B, like, a lot of times that feels like spin from the team, and you're never sure how much of that to trust. But when you look at what they accepted for him versus like what they got out of Dallas and what they whatever they weren't willing to settle for with Pittsburgh, it does seem to be a little bit like, okay, maybe there was at least some element of that there that wasn't working.
It's funny with the Mingo trade to Dallas, I'm reminded of Michael Crabtree's standoff with the 49ers when they drafted him, and he wanted to be paid like the top receiver in the draft. Sure. He wanted to be paid like the top receiver in the draft, despite the fact that the Raiders took Darius Hayward-Bay a couple of picks in front of him. And Crabtree and his agent took the position of Michael Crabtree, who is clearly the consensus number one receiver in the draft, should not be penalized for the absurdity of the Raiders franchise.
Which, like, fair.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I feel that way about the Cowboys when it comes to Mingo, right? I do wonder whether it was locker room stuff, like legitimately
and Thielen
or not.
is probably a good guy to have around.
Agreed.
In terms of his professionalism and like somebody that they can emulate in terms of the way he goes about his work.
For sure. But let's Lauren, let's put the actual people involved to the side, Thielen and Diontae Johnson. It's very possible DanMorgan knew he could not take another gots to go kind of, or got to make a deal kind of deal for one of the two veteran receivers on this team.
100%. I think that was a big part of it too. It's like, look, we had to make, for whatever reason, it could have just been a personality conflict and like, who knows, right? Between Diontae and somebody, but all it takes is one little thing, and already things are very fragile in that locker room, as we know. So like maybe, and with Thielen, it's like, well, we don't want to get rid of this guy necessarily. So like, we get that he wants a trade and we'll look into it, but like, we're also, the Panthers as the organization, we're not in a position, when does his contract up? Is it up after this year?
Thielen?
Yeah,
up after this year.
Well, but even so, like,
well, I think a couple of things could be at play here. Number one is, and I hope this is the case, I hope it's Morgan like us watching him get better as a GM in real time and doing that math of, hey, the league was telling us Diontae Johnson was the very best asset, the very best likely tradable asset on this roster. And so he felt like he had to act with what was available to him. He knows, like I said, that the absurdity of the Cowboys is an outlier. You can't count on it again. Right. And if the top asset on this roster was worth a pick swap, a fifth round pick swap, maybe it's not worth trading AdamTheilen.
That's the thing. I mean, I'm sure, like, what do you think that they were offering anyway? I mean, I'm sure they weren't offering much more than a 6. And at that point, it's like, what's the point? Like, I'd rather have him finish the year out with this roster. And is it different if they lose? I wonder if it is. Maybe it is. Maybe they do give him away for less. You know what I mean?
I mean, he's 34.
Yeah.
Right. He just turned 34. He'll be 35 before next season.
He's not going to command that much anyway.
Right. So I don't blame the Steelers if I
don't blame either side, honestly, because the Panthers are like, we have positive momentum going. Him coming back can only help. Like if they leave Bryce in, like it can only help Bryce. So like, why wouldn't you just keep him until the end of the year and then say goodbye and thank you for your service?
Lauren, can we like just call a spade here a little bit and say he's gonna be 35 before next season? Maybe the Panthers are gonna be the only team interested. Like maybe there's not a risk of losing him if he wants to come back.
Well, yeah, or he could just or maybe he retires if he would rather. Whatever. Yeah.
I mean, my point is like
it's possible. I don't know though. I would definitely want, if I'm a team that could use a guy that is reliable and has some young talent, I definitely want him.
I would want him for
like a couple years at most, obviously a year or two. Like
I would want him
1 year deal.
Yeah, for sure. But I would want him on a like take it or leave it offer. I'm not negotiating with a 35-year-old wide receiver.
Well, ageist.
Sure. I mean, my point in saying that is, and granted, I would have to do the research. I don't know if losing him to free agency means you are going to get a compensatory draft selection. Or maybe the market's not there for him. And if he wants to play for another year, the Panthers could be his only option. Like, why would you move at all?
Exactly. There was just no incentive.
Yeah. We've got a brand new show here at OG Triangle Media. It is called the Women's Basketball Podcast with Mia and Mitch. Mia O'Brien and Mitch Northam every week are taking you through all of women's basketball, the WNBA, college basketball. New episode went up on Wednesday morning. And just, I mean, it amazes me, Lauren, how much time they put into watching literally every top 25 and ACC team.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine devoting that much time to any sport.
Yeah, I mean, with college basketball creeping up in general, creeping up, like I was like, I'm sorry, what's today?
Right.
It's the first, what?
Right.
So I'm already like thrown off because I'm like, I'm still in football mode. I feel like increasingly every year, like December, I can turn the page and I'm there. But I mean, I can still watch some, but they're also, everybody's playing these teams they're going to beat by 1 million too. Right. So, but yeah, I'm gonna definitely watch more than I have in years past because I've definitely enjoyed Triangle women's basketball and national women's
for
basketball,
sure.
Really.
I mean, Mitch Northam, who, if you listen to Ovis and Giglio, right, we all know Mitch. We all like Mitch a lot. He knows the women's game. back and forth. And Mia is infectiously, genuinely a women's basketball fan, but quote unquote, before it was cool. So I'm going to ask you to give it a chance. The Women's Basketball Podcast with Mia and Mitch. You can find it on the OG Triangle Media YouTube channel or wherever it is you get your podcast. Coming soon, there will be a second episode every week behind the OG Fans paywall. Hey, by the way, if you are not subscribed, you can subscribe to OG Fans today at ogtrianglemedia.com. Lauren writes about the Panthers each and every Monday. And Lauren, I would be lying to you if I did not say your piece from last Monday literally made me a little teary-eyed for my boy.
Well, I did cry. I was very embarrassed, even as I was crying. I'm like, I'm really crying right now over this. I can't.
Well, let's pivot. Okay, ogtrianglemedia.com to sign up for OG Fans. Let's pivot off of that, Lauren. Will you let yourself believe that a win streak is possible?
You know what? I feel like what will help me is if I just let go of any of that and just try to it's going to sound so cheesy, but I did legit try to do this during the game and it did help some. Although I was so downtrodden that literally the whole time I'm like, well, they're not going to win.
Yeah.
But this is cool. Like, this is fun. That was kind of how I tried to approach it. And that, you remember, we said this in the beginning of the year. That was literally what I wanted out of the year in the first place. Was like, they're competitive, they're show improvement, like the young guys show what they can do, and like there's something to build around, right? And like that's all I've wanted this entire season. So for me, it was like, were there frustrating moments in the game? Of course there were, but like it was like, oh, like there's Jatavian Sanders like being used as an offensive weapon instead of as like some check down safety valve guy for Bryce. Like, that's nice. Like, oh, there's some downfield throws from Bryce. Very accurate. If I don't mind adding, there's Bryce like lowering the little guy lowering his shoulder. You saw that, right? Like by the goal line. I'm like, did he just by the way, guy just lower his shoulder?
I was so close on that play to texting you. I told you he'd have multiple rushing touchdowns this year.
Well, he was almost in, right?
He was real close.
But I was also a little worried for him. I'm like, please be careful.
I think that one of the things that you always have to talk about, and we've seen this for years now with the Europe game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's always a weird one.
Exactly. Weird stuff can happen. I know that the Patriots are not necessarily good, but like the Jaguars came back from London suddenly looking like they had life. And I can't imagine that didn't have to do with them being in London for 2 weeks and the Patriots just coming over.
Yeah, I'm sure that played a role as well.
So,
and also like this is a general rule of thumb with the Panthers.
Yeah.
Never look at the opponent and go, oh, they suck. They have a chance to win or they should beat them. No.
Yeah. And that's the thing,
I know
right?
Better.
Like the Saints in terms of talent on the roster. Yeah. The Saints are a better team than the Giants. And that is why I think a win streak is possible. That being said,
which coach is worse? Because Dennis Allen, bless you, and thank you for your service as well. Sorry to say that it got. I was like, what percentage of the Panthers like teams that they've beaten in the last 2 years have their coaches ended up fired?
It's a very good
probably
question.
High. I mean, because I think the Raiders will end
Arthur Smith last year in Atlanta
fired.
I mean, gosh, yeah. Is D'Amico Ryans the only one that's been on firm ground?
Yeah. Fired. Lose the Panthers, you're fired.
All right, here are the things to know about the Giants. This is one of the lowest scoring teams in the league. I do think we have seen over and over again, Daniel Jones is as limited a quarterback as whoever they're going to run out there for the Panthers in this game. So there is reason to believe. That being said, the speed is real.
Yes.
And you saw this burn the Panthers. Yes, you saw this burn them a couple of times with Derek Carr. Like, if you can't get home and complete a sack or even just disrupt a throw with a hit in the backfield.
Yeah.
Danny Dimes has enough speed to make you pay for that.
There was literally a play where they had him like in the grasp. And he found someone for a dump off.
Lauren, if we're talking about the same play, not only did they have him in the grasp, when he escaped, someone else got hands on him.
Yes.
And he's still.
And
we're talking about Derek Carr. We're talking about the Panthers' futility on defense.
And he dumps it off, and the guy goes for like 21 yards. And I'm like, I'm going to be sick right now. Like, are you kidding me? But yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And Daniel is obviously a better runner, than, like you said. And but the Panthers at times were able to step up and get stops. Plus, and we can't underestimate this, I suppose, either when it comes to the Giants, the self-check ability, like the Saints self-checked a lot offensively, like Dennis Allen not going for it on that 4th and short. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Because that's literally the only reason they had a chance to win the game. If they went for that 4th down, I was sure they were going to trot Taysom Hill's happy ass back out there to ruin my life again and get that 1st down. But he didn't do that because he is now fired. Like, there's a reason he's now fired. Like, so can the Giants also make similarly poor decisions? I think maybe.
I mean, look, as much as I am very biased and always will be biased towards Bryce because of the Bama connection, I'm very biased and always will be biased against Brian Daboll because of the Alabama connection. Like, this was a dude.
Yeah, he's not good either.
This was a dude that was hired to be offensive coordinator, and then Nick Saban had to also elevate Mike Loxley from analyst to co-offensive coordinator.
Tell you who you heard about from that offense. It was not Daboll.
Because Daboll did not know what to do with a mobile quarterback.
Right.
Like, I get he did have a great run in Buffalo, but we've seen this over and over again. Elite talent has a way of making so-so coaches look like they're ready for the next step. And I just I trust Brian Daboll to fuck this up. I really do. I know my boy can get it done.
I guess you just have to hope that DaveCanales doesn't.
Oh God.
Lauren,
before we pivot to Bryce, I want to not be out on DaveCanales.
I'm not out. It's just I'm frustrated.
So you and I have, I think, my hot guy bias is changing, because at first I was like you, like, when someone handsome has confidence, you are willing to believe, like, oh, of course this guy knows what he's doing.
And he's cool. He's collected.
Yes.
He's calm. He doesn't lose his shit, which is always a plus for me. Like, I always think that coaches that do that are compensating for something else.
I thought about this watching the game on Sunday, and this was when it looked like the Saints were about to pull away a little bit. Last year, I texted you because my daughter wanted to rewatch Barbie. The movie. And I texted you. It didn't dawn on me the first time I saw this, but I'm pretty positive watching this now that Ryan Gosling is absolutely playing Ken as Aaron. Oh, Jesus. His name just went out of my head. The Jets quarterback.
Oh, Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers. Thank you. Oh, my God.
I always felt like he was, a little bit. But then he's like more like a Travis Kelce by the end.
Sure. But my point is the no reason to be confident, supreme confidence, right? The no reason to feel superior, in extreme superiority.
100%.
I'm starting to worry that is DaveCanales. Now, granted, he's not an asshole about it.
That's the thing. Yeah.
But I really wonder what this guy can do, or can do, will allow himself to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe fair. I mean, I think he gets too cute a lot. I definitely think that there are sequences of plays that I find very confusing.
Yeah.
I think all I can hope for at this point is that now that he's seen hopefully enough out of Bryce to be like, okay, I can trust him maybe a little more than I thought. Because at first I think we could explain some of it away with like the trust. But then sometimes even with Andy Dalton, he would call a lot of get a little conservative inexplicably, and then sometimes get wildly dangerous. It was that you were like, what?
Yeah, it was why even before Dalton got hurt that I was like, if this is what we're gonna do, just let Bryce play. Like, who cares at this point?
Exactly. That's the thing. Yes, exactly. And I agree. But then you know what? In the second half, he did.
Yeah.
And then it was hard to know too, like how much of this is Bryce checking down, how much of this is, and maybe there's elements of both. Yeah, I don't know.
And look, let's be fair. Talk about Bryce checking down. Like, the play that turned into the Jatavian Sanders 46-yard reception, that was 45 yards of running on Jatavian Sanders' part.
It was, but there was one, I think, where they had him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, he had some great throws over these last 2 weeks. He's had some great throws to Coker and Liggett that you can't deny.
Downfield throws. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you, by the way, did you know before I put this in the notes that Bryce Young has only won in a black jersey as a Panther?
No, the only thing I knew, and that was only because someone tweeted it at me, is that he had never had a victory kneel down as a Panther because the other two wins were walk-off field goals.
That's right.
And I was like, huh. Maybe that's why I got so emotional. And maybe that's why he seemed to like his whole face like lit up and was just, and throughout the whole game too. That's what struck me was how much more fun he seemed to be having, how happy he was, how much more confident he seemed. I mean, it was very obvious to me. And that was what I liked to see the most, and it reflected in his play. And so, there were times in the, second quarter, third quarter early, I'm screaming. I'm like, Dave, let him go, please.
Yeah. And so that's why I asked.
But then he did. So you're like, okay.
That's why I asked this. Like, are you ready to say, let him be the guy? I mean, I thought it
depends on what you mean by that.
So I thought some of the columns were a little bit of an overreaction to a single win, right? For me, it is let him be the guy, because clearly, like, there's no greater ceiling with Dalton at this point.
Here's my thing, right? Yeah, at this point, let this be this.
Yeah.
Like, continue to ride out this moment. Ride the hot quarterback. I think we both felt that way even when Dalton was playing well. It was like, well, you know what? If Dalton hits a wall, like there's
after the first 2 weeks of Dalton, like I was telling you, like, God, it hurts my heart to say this, but there's no reason to go back to Bryce.
And I was worried about Bryce's psyche. He proved any doubts I had about that. No, I'm good. Yeah. Right? Like, we're good here. I don't see that anymore. I don't see the absolute mess of a quarterback that he was during that Saints game, where he looked afraid of literally everything happening around him. He looked like the opposite of that. Yeah. He looked as confident as we've ever seen him look. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I see that. Let's let this develop and see where it goes. So, for him, I'm not looking long term. I'm not like, could he be the star? I'm just like, let's just see where this goes.
So obviously the do you trade Bryce question has, I don't want to pin this just on ESPN, because this has been written by a lot of people.
I don't hate that they didn't.
No, I don't either.
At all. Because you could still do it later if he plays well.
I do wonder what it says that they didn't. ESPN reports that multiple teams asked, and
I bet you they didn't offer enough, at least in their
that was what I was going to say.
Because a quarterback is still valuable, especially if you're going to start him, and that's, I think, where the Panthers were probably like, if you're gonna, you need him to start right now, because your guy's hurt. Like, why would I give you like a 6th round? Like, why would I accept like a 5th or 6th round pick? Like, no.
Agreed. Monday morning, ESPN was throwing out there, these trades would make sense, and they listed both the Giants and the Raiders as a possibility.
You think you might have been able to fleece the Raiders
somehow, exactly. Like, I got to imagine there was some element for Morgan, if the calls had come in after Mingo, of like, well, if we can get a 4th for Mingo, we need at least a 4th for Bryce before we'll even entertain this option.
I mean, and also, like, I get, again, like, the fact that he had just played like that.
Yeah.
You don't want to, I mean, it might sound egotistical, and in a way, maybe it is, but it's like, you don't want to be the team that's like, you don't want to trade the number 1 draft pick after all you gave up to get him, just when he's starting to play well, only for everyone to go back and like point at the end of the tenure and be like, he was playing great. Like, why would they trade him? And then you're more of a laughingstock than you already are, which is difficult to do. And also, what's your plan B? You don't have one anyway.
Right. So Ben Solak wrote this, I think on Twitter, of like, you cannot dismiss the very real possibility that there is a sort of Schrodinger's cat thing going on here, of as long as Bryce is a Panther, whatever comes can be either the Panthers' fault or Bryce's fault.
Correct.
If you trade him and he is even remotely more successful on another roster than he is on your roster, boy, does that send a message to the viability of literally everybody in the organization. Not viability, I'm sorry. The competence of everybody in the organization at that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you just write this out and see where it goes, really. And, and you don't trade up in the draft again for another quarterback until and unless, and I don't think, in my opinion, I like Cam Ward. I do. But
there's no
one in this draft that is worth. So stop. Don't, David, don't. And you ride this out and see where it goes.
I mean, and look at where the NFL is right now, right? Who's to say the Panthers cannot get 1, maybe even 2 more wins? And look at the bottom of the NFL. Yeah. At that point, if you get to 4 wins with this Panthers team, you are right back in the position. If you really think, whether it's Shedeur, Carson Beck, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, whoever,
Do you know the things I would do?
Oh,
do you know how mad I would be?
I'm
sorry. He is considered good because he's at Georgia right now. That's the only reason right now.
I think that he legitimately was good last year. He is legitimately not this year.
Correct. And now people are still like, oh, he's in the Heisman. I'm like, why is he in the Heisman conversation?
Yeah.
For what?
Yeah, I don't.
He's played like garbage.
I don't believe that anymore.
Well, I hope you're right. But people are still acting like he could get an invite. I'm like, for what? Just so he can watch someone else win it? Because I don't understand what we're talking about.
I think you look at anybody that is in that realm being talked about as potential first-round quarterbacks. This
class isn't great. Like, let's just be real. It's not a game-changing class, maybe. Cam Ward has that potential because he's been able to take Miami from being, LOL Miami into like, I'm not going to let y'all fail and faceplant and lose this football game that you shouldn't lose.
I think Ward and Milroe both have superstar potential, but have such huge mountains to overcome before they are viable NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah, different kinds, but yeah.
Yeah. Like Cam's is a matter of playing elite competition. Milroe's is, have you tried throwing it to your wide receiver?
That's, yeah. Cam's is also his oopsie daisy-ness, as the Cover 3 podcast guys like to call it. Yeah.
Do you trust Bryce beyond week to week at this point?
No, like what? I mean, and not like in a no offense.
Sure.
I need more than like one of those.
Yeah,
I
ask this not because I think you should, but because going back to what I said,
it also doesn't matter to me that I do or not. You know what I mean? I'm here. Like, it sounds cheesy, but I'm here for his journey. I'm here for the journey. Sure. I understand that's what we're on right now with him. Like, I don't trust him the way I would any like week to week starting quarterback. Like, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like, that's not what this is about. And it ceased being about that a while ago for me. So I don't like trust him in the traditional sense, but like, do I want to see him like keep this going for himself? Like, even just like as a person, like, yeah. And do I think he's capable of it? After what I saw on Saturday, I do. I hope he does. But I also I saw the preseason. He looked a lot more like the quarterback I thought we saw on Sunday.
Right.
And then all of a sudden against New Orleans, it was like the first New Orleans game. It was like that went bye-bye.
Yeah.
So I hope that he can keep it going.
I mean, I ask you this not because I think you should have faith in Bryce from week to week. It is, I go back to like, boy, I thought he's clearly earned the starting job back. I thought that was kind of an overreaction.
Who do you trust? I trust like one person on this roster, I think.
Ooh, who?
Chuba Hubbard.
Oh, sure.
That's literally probably. Oh, and I guess Eddie Pinheiro. Right?
Yeah,
that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Oh, Johnny Hecker.
I was about to say, now we're getting to the people that are like, oh, it's a problem. This is who we trust.
That's who we trust. Correct. Exactly. And even Hecker is like not, and because special teams isn't always great, and sometimes he's under siege and hasn't had the best. Whatever. The point is, like Chuba is literally it for me. There's no one on the defense that I trust.
Yeah.
Why should you? Who else on offense? Really, Thielen used to be, but he's not playing right now.
I mean, I would tell you, and this is why I don't know that I'm ready to say, oh, of course Bryce has earned the starting job back, is I think you can trust Liggett, because go back and watch that Saints game. Look at how much chicken salad he made out of chicken shit throws.
Well, the problem with X, though, is that like then you have, and to be fair, his hand was hurt when this play happened, but like this almost broke me, Demetri, because I'm like, universe, really?
Yeah.
Like to literally have the reception on a perfectly thrown pass by Bryce Young just taken directly out away from him.
Yeah.
Like as if the older brother taking something out of the younger brother's hands or whatever. Like it was like, no, that can't happen.
Right.
But, and he has some drops every now and then that you're like, bro.
He does. Yeah.
But obviously the plays he can make. Yeah. Like I'm excited by it. And I chalk it up to rookie growing pains. I'm not worried about him long-term. You know what I mean?
I think the interception was a video game glitch. There is no other way to describe what you saw.
I don't know what else to do with it. I have to ascribe some sort of credit, obviously, where it's due, but also like I have to like ascribe some blame to someone. Right. It's just like, and also I don't know how you can't count that an interception, but it just feels so unfair.
Agreed.
It's like one of the most unfair interceptions I've ever seen.